Peace be upon you all, and good evening to you all, dear audience and dear viewers. It's my pleasure to meet you on the virtual meeting held by the Knowledge Communication and Knowledge Center as part of the initiatives of the Ministry for discussing the pandemic. Coronavirus pandemic. It's a series of meeting which held by the center to spread knowledge and contribute enriching culture and knowledge about the economic issues, current economic issues. Our meeting today, it's comes at a high time when the kingdom witnesses a lot of challenges and the gradually reopening of the economic activities and the other precautionary measures imposed by the countries to curb the spread of the coronavirus. This is the worst disaster after the Second World War. Today, we will talk about the crisis related over history and the most important experiences of countries taken to curb the spreads of these crises and the successful models of the financial models for recovery. And the last point, we will highlight on the investment opportunities generated by disasters and crises. On behalf of you and myself, let me welcome Dr. Khalid Suilam, economic and financial expert, former chief counselor and director general of investment at SAMA, and non-resident affiliation with Harvard. And Mr. Abdullah Redzi, the member of the Saudi Financial Association, and finally, journalist and Mr. Mohammed Al-Pishi, who enriches us with his insights and views. Good evening to you all. Good evening to you all. Welcome. I will start with you, Dr. Khalid. Of course, precisely, IMF has updated its report on the pandemic as the report about the repercussions of the pandemic on the economic activities, which hit the world's economies, and this has affected the outlook of the world's economy. How can we describe the economy and why this coronavirus pandemic is different from the other crises? In the financial crisis of 2028 and the economic conditions at the time in Europe and the world is totally different from the coronavirus pandemic conditions, but in Gulf states in general, this is the coronavirus has a lot of repercussions and implications on the economy, and this is because of the huge impact of the coronavirus on the economies of the Gulf states. Oil-producing countries hit hard by this crisis, while the other crises impacted the industrial countries, and the slump and the drop in oil prices as well affected the economies of these economies, including the Saudi economy, especially the foreign exchange reserve. But fortunately, the oil prices recovered at to have high-low prices. Now we have regained these prices, high prices of oil prices again. But the most important point in this regard, that the current crisis, coronavirus, COVID-19, for the growing economy, that we will witness long-term impact of the coronavirus. So we have taken policies and policies and actions to mitigate the impact of these repercussions and the implications, and we're gonna go in details and delve into details in these coronavirus implications. Mr. Abdullah Reddy, IMF reported that there will be contraction of the world's production to 3.4 compared to April, and also the repercussions of this crisis is not fully envisaged. Of course, it's hard and it's difficult, and we should fully understand that today the estimates from IMF or the World Bank or any other government agencies and the competent authorities are not accurate, because the pandemic is not clear where the direction is. And as you can see, a lot of countries, or some countries, which have taken precautionary actions and measures and economic lockdown. Now they are reopening the economic activities in some cities or the macro economy. So at the outset of the crisis in February and March, the expectations were something, but in April something else, and in May something else, in June it's totally different. And I think that we are still witnessing some changes down the road. No, it's very logic, because every day we have updates and updates of the information that we receive. So we cannot expect and estimate, and I cannot rely on the forecast of the IMF regarding the estimation of the growth or contraction affected the world, because, as you know, that these measures can be changed, and you can look at the oil prices, which keep changing. I cannot give a weight to the estimation today or estimates today, because every day we have more confidence about the end of this tunnel, but it doesn't mean that it will be accurate and precise and to be taken into analysis or realistic studies for accurate decisions. Mr. Mohammed, the alliances and international efforts, we can say, what is the role of such alliances to mitigate the pandemic repercussions? In fact, good evening to you all, and good evening to my viewers. I highly appreciate having me, and I hope that this will be of great benefit for the viewers. As you know, that in all crises we might have some sort of division in the world, especially for the protectionism and the suspension and disruption of supply chains. And each country try to contain and control their supplies. And in some cases, we have some countries we have seen some looting for the aircrafts, and some countries are very concerned about the shortage of raw materials and the trading of accusation between USA and China over corona crisis. So G20, thanks to Allah, led by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, has made a breakthrough in making international alliances, and this is the first unified international responses to combat and confront coronaviruses. And we have seen the G20 virtual summit, and the Kingdom has promised to pay about $5 billion US dollar, and to provide a vaccine for virus, in addition to the other meeting held at the level of the commerce ministries. And we fully understand that coronavirus is not it's the worst one, and its implication have touched all the countries around the world. Each village, cities have been negatively impacted. So at the first we didn't have a unified response, and the EU failed to provide unified response. United Nations and the other international organizations, WHO and the other organizations, didn't provide unified response. But the G20 led the unified response. Now, if we talk about the G20, how can you see and envisage the role of the kingdom, given that it's the leader of G20? G20 is not Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and this is very important point of paramount. It's the central bank of the G20. As the US central bank is the central bank for bombing US. So the kingdom has a pivotal role at G20, especially at crisis time. The current crisis, the kingdom has played remarkable and unprecedented role to lead the world. And as a result of this, curbed the spread of the virus and the oil production cuts. And due to the efforts of the kingdom to reduce and to cut the production cuts, and without these efforts, the international economy would have been negatively impacted. And there is a very important point. This is in tandem with this huge rule, in tandem with the policies, incentives policies by the central banks, major central banks at G20, especially the U.S. reserves, to put a limit to the huge drops in the financial and collapse of financial markets. Mr. Abdullah, talk about the impact of coronavirus. This pandemic has a lot of implications on short and long term. How can you envisage this? To my mind, the repercussions of virus, we can take it at different dimensions and fronts. We can say at the public sector level, private sector, oil sector, and the non-oil sector. If we take, for example, the oil sector, it's closely related to the revenues of the government. Today, this crisis has impacted the demand, and now we have a surplus in demand, and this has led to the fluctuation of prices, and this led to drop in revenues. And the commitment of the kingdom to reduce and drop and cut the oil production. So this has led to double impact. And this is now we have some sort of deficit. This is for the oil sector and the government sector. For the private sector, the impact due to the precautionary measures taken so today, and this is the case applies in different countries of the world. So when we have lockdown, the retail sector, tourism sector, housing sector, and hospitality sector impacted by these measures, the revenues hit zero. So this impact partly or largely will be in long term. But if these measures prolong it, the impact will be in the medium term or the long term. Current crisis differs from previous ones, being a global crisis which hits almost all countries. The financial crisis of 2008 mainly affected financial sector in United States and international banks in Europe and Japan that were linked to U.S. loan contracts. As for the Gulf states and the Asian countries in general, the effect was relatively simple and indirect at that time. Oil prices, it's true, fell sharply, but for a very short period of time, after which they rose again to record levels. The Asian crisis in 1997 had greater impact on the Gulf countries, China, uh, the oil or the oil exporting countries in general, while industrial countries in Europe and America were not much affected. Oil prices decreased at that time to low levels and continued as well for a relatively long period of time, almost causing great damage to the Saudi economy and the foreign exchange reserves at Sama. But fortunately, thank God, and with the success of God's, oil prices returned to rise at appropriate time so that the Saudi economy recovers and then oil prices rise to record levels. But the most important point in this simple explanation is the fact that the current crisis is more profound and has hit all industrial and developing countries alike. This doesn't necessarily mean that the damage created by this crisis will be on the long run, and this will depend on the policies and the measures taken by the countries and the level of global coordination in this regard. We may delve into details regarding this point later on in this interview. Thank you. If we move to the second part of this seminar, we'll start with Dr. Khalid to ask him now. The world has waged a lot of battles against viruses on the financial and economic and human levels. Do you think that the world was ready to deal and handle the coronavirus? Yes, over the humankind history, we have seen a lot of companies, agencies, exerted concerted efforts from different countries in a precedented manner, as if the human values go above the vision and differences. But the surprise lies was clear in healthcare system as a lot of physicians and that what they have gained knowledge for the methods of for the confronting of this pandemic is totally different by 100%. Before the outset and the outbreak of this pandemic, and this now we have witnessed a lot of developments in the treatments and for the economic aspect. The main lesson or the key lesson of the previous crisis is the crucial factor and precisely in the previous crisis solution lies in to be proactive in your defense rather to wait to defense or to attack. You should be proactive for to have preemption actions. We are talking about the U.S. Reserve Bank is talking about what is needed and what is required, not what should be done. When the U.S. Reserve Bank intervened, they were keen to communicate a message that they will do everything it takes, not only what they can. There is a big difference between the two concepts. So this is a key indication for the to be strict to handle and to address the implications. Graduation is not gradual actions is not does not fit in this regard. This is the main lesson which you can draw from the previous crisis in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and at the national level we have seen strict and firm actions and painful actions, despite being painful in long and short term, but they are the only solution to avoid long-term repercussions on the public and the private sector. The graduation here does not fit. This is the main lesson that we can draw from the previous crisis. Mr. Abdullah, if we talk about the preemptive actions and steps, what the impact of the measures taken by the countries on their economies. So how can we measure the success of these measurements or procedures? This is a very good question, because we have a lot of arguments about the incentives. If we go back in history, the best example and the model in 2008 financial crisis in USA and its repercussion in other countries, we had strong crisis and a big challenge to the world and the international order. The US provided incentives, and at the time, a lot of economists were talking about, we're talking about the financial experts and the others, or the analysts said that the quantum will lay foundation for a huge inflation, given the huge amounts given, and the repercussions can extend for long years. But the inflation was in short scope, and after that the international economy recovered, especially in US, and the unemployment reached the lowest record. Today the US federal, I'm talking about the international experience, this is the best central bank. The central bank has benefited from and learned from the previous crisis, and they provided a lot of incentives and the package of stimulus for the economy. And the U.S. the department or administration has allocated a lot of money as stimulus today. This is the most important lesson, that we should have a quick action and reaction, riposte and swift reaction at the outset of the crisis, just not to wait until the crisis exasperated, but we should manage time and provide stimulus, and we can, after that, we can investigate who needs such stimulus and incentives. The most important point of such international experience is to act quickly and swiftly in stimulus, especially in crisis time, not to wait so long, as Dr. Khalid said. And this is we have seen at the national level in the stimulus package, when SAMA launched a program for the banking sector and fully supported the banking sector. And we have seen a statement of the governor, His Excellency the Governor. Without such incentives and stimulus, the banking sector will face a lot of challenges for providing loans, but this program has helped the banking sectors, and I think all the SAMA has provided 50 billions, and this is a good and timely decision to help banking system and sector, because if you are late, it's too late to save the dead. If we talk about the initiatives launched by the government, now I will ask Mr. Mohammed El-Bishi. This crisis, no doubt, it was a big test for the efficiency of the countries, not only at the economic level but at the health level. What are the challenges faced? The major challenges faced by the world countries? What are the major and the key challenges faced by the world countries in corona virus? I think the major and the key challenges is to contain the rhythm of the virus and to control it, not to affect the health infrastructure. Some countries work and some other countries don't work. But the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia initiated to launch some measures for health infrastructures and supporting the supply chain of healthcare supplies and building factories, and the readiness and the preparedness of the health infrastructure was good, and the readiness was taken to higher levels to provide the human factors and health supplies. And I think the biggest challenges is the financial capacity. Some countries resort to IMF to get loans just to avert the crisis and the impressions, and other countries like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, one of the top five of foreign exchange reserves, which enabled it to spend. And we have challenges related to the readiness of technology and digitalization. As you know, that technology, it was the biggest challenge to provide and to deliver food and medicines and work at distance. Some countries were not fully prepared digital to handle such a crisis, but as other countries said that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was fully ready to handle, to address the repercussions of the crisis with the sound infrastructure and the internet connection, and we have a challenge regarding to the good management of the crisis. We have a swift response to the crisis. Other countries, advanced countries, were so late to act quickly, but the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, before reporting and recording any cases, the Kingdom has taken a lot of measures, and so the management and the financial capacity are one of the key challenges. Dr. Khalid, may I ask you a question? Dr. Mohammed, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has initiated precautionary measures at earliest time, which enabled the Kingdom to handle the crisis with stability. What are the impact now? What are the impact of such measures on the economic side? You have correctly said that, and we have mentioned before for the precautionary measures that you should be firm and strict at the earliest time of the crisis, but late measures and actions will come at high cost, and take fully-fledged actions. For example, for the VAT. If we increase the VAT gradually, I think it wouldn't work at all. But in case of a crisis, as the current situation, if the main goal is bigger than that. It is just to control the local consumption, to to protect the foreign reserve, to empower and to enable the kingdom to spend over the health care system during the pandemic, and to keep the employment and create jobs, and to provide the basic supplies for the citizen. So to be late in providing in implementing such that will have uh, negative impact. Mr. Mohammed, if we talk about the kingdom, talking about the economic reforms, we have witnessed huge economic reforms, and this is, of course, the economic reforms contributes to control the fiscal policy, and the Lion Vision 20 contributed to help the country to recover and to make the country, to make the kingdom get out of this crisis in a position of strength. Personally, without having Vision 2030, we could face huge challenges. As I said before, the kingdom had double hits from the drop in oil prices and the pandemic. We are talking about 13 sectors heavily hit by the crisis, the pandemic. We are talking about entertainment, tourism, hospitality, and the retail, and the mining, and the other petrochemical. We're talking energy, and other many sectors have been badly hit, with a few exceptions, such as communication sector. Without having Vision 2030, this ambitious plan, now we have taxation system is one of the reforms. Yes, we can. This is affect the living level, and but the government has addressed such impact of increasing the VAT and the taxes through the citizen account and the other methods to address such increase. And as I said, without having a taxation system, we cannot implement such VAT, and this is from one side. Without having Vision 2030, we wouldn't be able, or international credit reputation and the ranking, which can help the countries to enter other international countries with bonds. And the Vision 2030 has established the sovereign fund, which has huge revenues for the kingdom away from oil. And through Vision 2030, we have reformed a lot of the formation of the Saudi economy regarding the jobs, regarding the allowances, and the mechanism of spending. And the Vision 2030, without any further ado, combated the corruption, and lay the foundation for a new life, breathe a new life for the Saudi economy based on governance and efficiency. And I think this will better serve, or have better serve the kingdom to combat. I'm not talking about the financial balance program. Mr. Abdullah, if we talk about the mechanism taken by countries to handle and to address this crisis, we can say that the bill footed by the government is huge. We are talking about 9 billion. We talk about 214 billion footed by the government. My question is, what if we haven't taken such procedures and the measures? Simply, the problems of short term will turn into long term. This is what every country to avert and to avoid. To avert of the short-term crisis to be a long-term crisis, because the bill of reforms and the cost of such impact will be greater than what you pay in short term. So governments today, and especially the government of Saudi Arabia, foot the bill more than 200 billion Saudi riyal to mitigate such crisis and to help the private sector to be able to survive and thrive. Why the private sector, and why especially private sector, and why this subsidies and support was well considered and well studied. Some, as I have said, the health and the care, health care, but for the other business sectors, to keep such entities working and kicking in the private sectors, it means that I will keep the job rates. As I said, that the short-term crisis turn into long-term crisis. This will lead to losing jobs. When investment in flux, it's hard to recover and to regain such investment. As you know, that destruction is fast and the reconstruction is slow. So, as you know, it will be a costly bill for the government and the private sector. Consequently, today, we should closely follow what is going on the private sector and to provide support for the private sector. As I said, the 200 billion Saudi riyal for the private sector by summer, and it's a good indicator that this program is successful. And I think that that we have loans for the SMEs, and I think such loans will be fully exploited over the next 2 months, in addition to SAND program, which help the Saudi people, Saudi citizens, to be in their jobs. And I think this is a very smart, and it has helped all of the private sector and the other companies to keep the jobs. And this is the ultimate goal until the economy recovers. So we need to have all these measures to give their fruits and they give the desired results. So we need to keep all these measures in place. We come to the third part for the successful models for the procedures taken by the other countries during the crisis. And Dr. Khalid, especially Dr. Khalid, if we look at how the governments handled precautionary measures to mitigate the crisis, we have the USA model and the other models, such as East Asia. Where is the position of the kingdom in these models applied in other countries? You have correctly said and mentioned the structure of the economy in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is totally different from the other economies in the world. For the things that I have mentioned in Germany and Europe and the other industrial countries, this is a diverse economy. The Saudi economy is conventionally defined as economy depends on the natural resources and the government spending. So the importance of sustainability of the economy, because it's the source of financial stability and welfare for the citizens. And this is the bridge, or it acts as the bridge through which we can transform the economy depending on one commodity into a diversified economy. If we take in the results, when we compare, we can see that the kingdom has achieved during this crisis results advanced results in the preservation of the jobs of the citizen in the public and the private sector, and the services including health care and the other services basically needed, and this is not a comparison to the developing countries only, but industrial countries which have made success during this crisis. Mr. Abdullah, the Kingdom of Saudi, over the previous years, in terms of economic reforms, it has a lot of structural reforms. Do you think that such reforms have mitigated the impact of the COVID-19 today in current economic conditions? How can this help to realize Vision 2030? We talk about reforms. We talk about the most important one, the economic reform, which is still in the in the inception stage. But if we talk about the financial reform, which is part of this system now, we have figures. We can compare what if we don't have financial reforms. The financial reform is is part of financial balance program, and one of the most important component of which to diversify the resources through the imposing VAT and the implementation of VAT. Second, to reduce subsidies on electricity, power, and the fuel sector, and increase the spending efficiency and the other taxes on the items or excise tax and excise tax. So this course that we have taken at the financial reform, despite being modified for the consideration of the private sector, for the expat levies, for example, we have delayed more than time. It should have been implemented in 2020. Nonetheless, with such delay, the reform is affected and implemented by the financial bills contributed today that the impact of coronavirus on the public finance less impactful if we have the other course depending fully on oil. Actually, that we had a report about the budget and the economy situation and the position in which if we don't implement the financial balance program. And I still recall that such figures, the reserves will reach zero in 2019, 2020. Our reserves will dry up, run out of reserves by 2020. So, of course, and indeed, the situation would be worse without having the financial balance program in place. Thanks to Allah, this program has contributed to give some sort of stability. And it's not sufficient. It's not sufficient, but we need more actions. But it has given some sort of stability without having it in a place. So, of course, this program and these reforms today has hugely contributed to mitigating such impact. Mr. Mohammed, if I ask you, we can say today that some countries have factors and to recover from such a crisis. They have resources and the elements which can help them and enable them to recover such a crisis. Yes, we have discrepancy in the economic powers of different countries, and handling the health care repercussion of such COVID-19 I think we will have the impact over time. I totally agree with it, Mr. Abu Abdullah. We're still in the first steps of the economic and financial reforms, but we have other points that we have made huge progress, such as opening the Saudi economy for the foreign investment, and the Saudi economy is included in emerging economies in indexes of the high increase in tourism revenues. Yes, we're still in indeed we're still in the first steps, but we have achieved a lot, and we have made a huge success and progress. Other aspects different from the financial aspects, we have made progress regarding the program of Hajj and Umrah and increasing the number of visitors, and other points in Vision 2030 today serve us better serve us and better serve our economy. Coming back to your question for the countries which have taken rapid actions will recover faster, and as oil as a commodity, any recovery in the world economy will be reflected on the demand on oil. Some countries which have loans from the other international organization, they will have low and slow recovery, and the other sectors might have time to be fully recovered, such as the auto sectors and the industries. And as you know, that some countries, Corona is like the straw which pricks the pricks. Is I think the recovery will take the shape of V and U. Doctor, talking about the procedures taken by the countries, how can we describe indirectly the economic measures taken by the kingdom? How can you see? What do you think of such the easiest way? There is some sort of confusion of the results made by the countries. If we look at the results of three countries, we can divide them into categories for the classification and for clarification as well. For the strengths and weakness, the industrial powers have maintained the strengths, elements, and factors, and the Gulf states in general, and the Asian developed countries, they have achieved results which are not different from the other industrial countries. Talking about the results, if we focus on the results, but for the developing countries, other developing countries in other parts of the world, in the Arab world, in the Middle East in particular, and Latin America and Africa, they suffering from the inability of facing and addressing this crisis, and this was clear. So we need collaboration to help such countries to recover from such countries, because the impact wouldn't confine to such countries but the entire world. Mr. Mohammed, if we look at the measures taken by the countries, they might be painful. So what are the options, the other options for the government of Saudi Arabia to mitigate the impact of such crisis? A lot of countries have opted to and chosen to let the private sector pray to the corona and to face coronavirus alone, such as in Qatar, in Bahrain. Uh, uh, they have reduced wages, and other countries, even if in USA, the conditioned support. We are talking about huge airlines companies now are now have to lay off their employees, and some countries lay off their employees and reduce wages, or deleting or allowances, or just to keep the health services at the lowest level, such as in Turkey, Iran, Venezuela, and Brazil today. These countries suffer in their response to the procedures and the actions that they have taken. But in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had resort to foreign debts, and it has taken about 100 billion Saudi US dollar, just to help the kingdom to address the pandemic, and it has increased the VAT to 15%. Such procedure, despite some people thinking that it will impact the consumption, and I think the low prices of the commodities internationally will never impact the low income citizen, and this will achieve, as we have seen, 100 billion dollar to the budget. These procedures and measures can be followed by, if in case of the improvement of the public finance. This is, I think, this is a necessary and measures which can serve the purpose that the government have. If we come to the final theme of this seminar about the available opportunities in economic crisis, we start with Dr. Khalid with this question. Despite the economic challenges, but they can be taken as opportunities for creating new services such as e-commerce, logistics sectors, and emerging one. What is the optimal rule and appropriate rule for the private sector to take advantage of such opportunities? No doubt, these crises, this is a crisis can help us to have a sound financial policy to be able to face crisis, and this is very important point. We cannot diversify our economy without the confirmation and the lay emphasis on controlling the financial policy, aiming for sustainability, and this is what taken and done by the Asian countries, benefiting from or learning from their previous experiences. This is the key Asian countries have done after they have come out from the previous financial crisis, just to focus on the foreign exchange reserves for the financial stability and for sustainability. Now these countries, the said countries, the major and the key successful countries over the last 20 years, China, South Korea, Singapore, and other major countries, now they have the largest sovereign funds in the world, as if a hedge which protected different development and industrial sectors. In the vision of 2030, the kingdom has taken the similar course, as if trying to offset during the leap years and the consecutive 5-year plan over the 50 years. This crisis and the future challenges will increase our firmness to achieve such ambition. Mr. Abdullah Ridzi, you have talked about the economic reforms over the last years. Today, we're talking about the investment opportunities, new investment opportunities. Do you think that this is timely investment and opportune investment opportunities? Before talking about the investment opportunities, we're talking about the parts Mr. Mohammed have touched regarding the low income brackets and the impact of the crisis on them. And I think today, with the given the procedures and increase in VAT, to pay more attention to increase and enlarge social security network and to enhance social insurance program which can help the low income households and families to cope with and to mitigate the impact of the increase of VAT and to give more enforcement and enhancement of these programs. And we have this program in place, which is Raya, but we hope that we have more enforcement with more enhancement with the increase, given the increase in VAT. For the investment topic today, in the light of such current circumstances, it has changed a lot of the mindset and the perception of the investors regarding the sectors that they invest on, such as retail, travel, education, and the other sectors, which have become now, they try to benefit from Corona, just not to have the same disruption and paralysis. So the major title is to change, or the point is to be more, to have more flexibility of the international models. We can continue in conventional sector, but we have a flexible business model just to be able to adapt with any changes, with any disruption, and we might have new waves of coronaviruses. So we might have more stricter actions. So I should have more adaptive and flexible business model. So how can we learn to be flexible and agile, not to be paralyzed and restricted, and including the educational sector? We should develop distance learning and online courses, just have virtual courses such as what we have today. And now with we have a huge pool for them, and for retail sector, for logistics and online shopping. Now we have we have some sort of challenges for delivery of goods during the crisis. So these are the areas of improvements. We come to the areas which without a clear solution, such as tourism and travel. Tourism and travel will not fully recover. So we need to have more flexible solutions to address the impact on these sectors. So the major title is to have to transform and to be more agile and flexible. Today, if I have any business, I look at the flexibility of this business to confront the coronavirus. Mr. Mohammed, come back to you. For the government at the beginning of this crisis and the initiatives launched to protect the investment environment by taking a number of initiatives and actions. What was the reaction of international investors um, to the initiatives and the actions taken by the government with the as you know that first crisis has two sides, opportunities and the threats, and including the great recession. Each in each from each crisis, we can have huge and big names such as Amazon and others, and the big players, and even the wealthy people are born from the huge crisis, and this is so. The crisis might be of two faces: the threats and opportunities. We can benefit from such crisis, and I think the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is one of the fewest governments which have fully taken advantage of the coronaviruses, and we have seen the PIF campaign launched in different countries by taking this advantage by buying the shares of pioneering and leading companies in the world, and this will generate huge revenues for the kingdom and for the public investment fund. And we have a lot of investors who have made huge fortunes in local and global markets, and this, of course, totally depend on depend on the investors being bold enough to take such measures. If we talk about the IMF, their forecast is they have a vague outlook, and this has impacted, Dr. We have some political tensions between the US and China. Do you think this will impact on the economic recovery from this crisis? Fortunately, a lot of the economists might have different opinions with the opinion of IMF regarding and concerning the depth of this crisis and the years needed for recovery of the world's economy, because this the fully depend on the coordination, coordination among the countries, and synergy and collaboration of countries. So the world has benefited from the previous crisis, which make the precautionary policies more effective. For example, the huge liquidity by the U.S. Federal Reserves with the limitless amounts. This is led to the collapse of the world economies, a distant thing. So, building infrastructure for the recovery of the world economy at higher rates rather than expected. And unfortunately, the record of IMF in their future forecast is not good. So it's hopeful that the situation over the next years, thanks to God, will be better than the forecasts of the IMF for the world economy. Mr. Mahmoud? These are the most important and the topic, but we have a lot of questions from our audience. Mr. Abdullah Reddy, Mr. Abdurrahman, the oil prices have been improved. Why we continue to impose with the imposition of taxes? This is a very good question. Today, the government cannot handle handle any decisions at short term or just to be a quick reaction. Today, oil, if we learn from, we shouldn't have full confidence in oil prices. Today we have dump in or the oil prices plummeted. This is we have some sort of fluctuation, and we cannot link our stability to the oil prices, which is we have some sort of fluctuation, and they are very volatile. So we cannot link our stability to the oil prices. We can say, okay, the oil prices have been improved. What will happen if the oil prices, we have witnessed a drop in oil prices? What will be the situation? We come to introducing the VAT. From one point, if we talk about the economic reform, we have not taken 2020. 2020 is this is a bad situation right now. So the government is looking at 2020, 21, 23, how they can finance or fund 0.5 trillion salaries. How can I finance and fund such amounts if the oil prices can finance the half of such amounts? So one of the fastest solution is the VAT, increase in VAT, but the only solution, but it's part of the solution. It's part of the solution just to reduce the deficits, but it will take time. And until we have the fully-fledged economic reform for 2030 or beyond, where we have the diversification of the Saudi economy and to depend on the private sector and to have privatization. So this will decrease the government spending. But today, the options are so few to finance and fund the salaries and the wages and the other spending of the government. Dr. Khalid, the options at the table for the government are open, few. This is a very important point, as I have indicated at the beginning of my talk, that we cannot say that that the increase in VAT for to increase the revenues. The finance minister has adopted a sound policy to increase revenues, but the most important point here is to control the financial stability and the balance, and to maintain the reserves, which can empower the government to serve the citizen and private sector in the long run. And the risk not to take any action or to based on the outlook of or the forecast of the oil prices will be high in the future. I think this is a huge risk for the government, and the government has taken strict steps for the financial stability and the financial balance. Mr. Mohammed, some people ask that what is the benefit of the increase in the VAT, which will increase the burden on the shoulders of the citizens? How can the ultimate goal, the government is seeking to enhance the revenues by introducing VAT and increasing the revenues. This is at the end of the day to provide a better service for the citizen and increasing the. You can imagine that the health services provided during the pandemic and the education services during services and bringing back Saudi citizens from different parts of the world and financing the salaries and the wages of the citizens and the allowances of transport and the other allowances haven't been impacted. So the entire benefit and ultimate benefit by increasing the increase of the VAT, the government might have resort to other things to suspend some projects or increasing the debt levels and to take from the reserves. And this will impact on the Saudi Riyal. The Saudi Riyal is one of the most powerful currencies, because we have huge foreign exchange reserves owned by the kingdom, and we cautiously drew from such reserves because this will impact the power of Riyal, and this will impact the purchasing power of the citizen. And instead of having such 10,000 Saudi Riyal, the inflation will impact. So the government averted all such risks and resorted to increase in VAT. Yes, for sure it will have some repercussions and implications on the purchasing power, but we can overcome it in the long run. And this is cannot be compared to some surfaces which wouldn't be in the entire benefit of the citizen, and they better serve the citizen as other countries have taken. So the entire benefit will be, and this is for the best of the citizen due to the actions and procedures and the measures taken by the wise leadership. Now we have free services, education, health provided, routes, and the other services provided to the citizen without fees or for free for the citizens. And we have advanced taxation system applied in other countries for the routes, for the education, for the health, and for other systems. But now we have the VAT and excise tax, and we have other income tax, but all these tax at the lowest level of the taxes compared to other countries if we take into account the cost of living. So the entire benefit and this is for the interest of the citizen at the end of the day. Mr. Why we don't reduce the VAT or the taxes at the lowest level? We can say that in addition to what has been said from Dr. Khalid, as Dr. Khalid has said, for the stability and for the stability of the power of Riyal, there is a big difference between us and the USA. Why USA maintains the consumption or give incentives for the consumers to increase their consumption, because the GDP 70% of which is consumption. We don't. There is no other country in the world like USA. The biggest the GDP largely comes from consumption. So it's very important as a regulator in USA, we pay attention, or we are merely concerned about the consumption at huge figures. So if we look at the component of GDP, if 70% of is consumption, so we should enhance consumption. How we can enhance the consumption? By reducing taxes. And will increase consumption and will increase the revenues, which will benefit the government through the VAT, and they have diversified tax base. So all these will come to as part of the revenues of the government. So they will take advantage of this, because of this. This is a generator of revenues for the government, or source of revenues for the government. So for the best interest to stimulates, but we have the opposite in the case A. The GDP, the consumption is only 30% of GDP. It has no significant importance or as important or significant as USA or UK, which is 65% in UK. So the consumption is not of so consumption, but the importance and significance lies in oil sector and the government sector, which constitute or account for 45% of GDP. So paying attention on these matters can give, at the end of the day, soundness of GDP. So the government spending or the government is the driver or the machine of this economy, while in America the machine is the private sector, not the government. So it's very important to rescue the machine in private sector, which in USA, and to rescue the machine in KSA, which is the government, to be able to spend on other projects. So this will make a huge for recovery and speed recovery. So we have different actions and procedures taken in different countries. Dr. Khalid, WHO cautioned against the next wave of COVID-19. What will be the impact on the world economies in case of next wave? It's clear that states and countries of the world have benefited from and learned a lot from the previous crisis. And as I have asked the specialists, that their knowledge right now has been greatly increased and totally different by 100% in the situation compared to the current situation. This is a very important element. So the situation is different now from the very start. For the financial and economic aspects, we hope that this will be developed into a larger or greater problem. This is a weak probability because of the strictness and firmness of central banks at the international level to confront this crisis. So it's unlikely that will lead to worse results. Mr. Mohammed Al-Bishi, do you expect that the employment rate will increase? Where in Kingdom Saudi Arabia or the other? Yes, I'm talking about KSA wise. For course, and this is normal, we will have impact on employment rate despite the huge efforts made by the government. But the labor markets will be less hit and impacted due to the actions and measures taken by the government, especially in the private sector. For example, right now we have support and subsidies of about 60% for 3 months, and the SMEs have been fully supported and subsidized to provide jobs for the expatriates and the Saudi citizen by exempting them from loans, and this will contribute to maintaining maintaining jobs and keeping jobs. Of course, we will have some layoffs, and some companies will try to address their financial situation by laying off some employees, and this is natural and the normal situation, especially the companies which have benefited from the support programs. But in the long run, thanks to Allah, we have Vision 2030. We are talking about that that we will reduce employment to 7% or 6% by 2030, and we have a lot of mega projects being launched in Neom and Gidea and Red Sea and the Raya Gate. These are mega projects which generated jobs for the Saudi, and in the next 10 years it will be the big source of job creation source, and Corona might have some kind of impact. Today we are hearing about uh, uh, 40 jobless U.S. citizen. In the other countries, the jobless or employment is at the high records. But for us, it's under our control. We will witness speed recovery, the economy will recover soon. This is the optimism is required in this case, but we should be more cautious and to have a look and eye at the future. The future is not linked to coronavirus pandemic. We might face a new crisis related to oil markets as it happened in the past. So we need to have some sort of hedging because our economy is depending on single commodity. And we have historical opportunities missed by the kingdom, and we could have built huge foreign reserves, and if as such happens, the physical space would be greater and bigger for the kingdom, and the options and the flexibility at the table are bigger, and Vision 2030 have come to offset what happened and to build savings, national savings for the future, and to work hard to diversify the resources of the economy, regardless the crisis, whatever crisis will come in the future. Mr. Abu Abdurrahman, will we witness swift recovery? I think this is a very hard question. It's very hard to answer this question because, as you know, that we are talking about coronavirus as precautionary measures and health measures. I can say that as I said at the beginning of my talk, that today and every day in and out give us more confidence to see the light at the end of this tunnel. But I am so concerned about the repercussions of the crisis, not recovery. The repercussions and the implications and the protectionism taken by some countries, such as happened in China, and the Brexit and the situation of the EU Union. We have a lot of challenges and the changes in the international landscape, which urges us to consider what is going in the future and to look into the situation. Yes, we can witness a swift recovery, but the implications and the repercussions, we should be more cautious about them. If you allow me, in terms of corona, the implications and repercussions of they are not fully negative. Some of them might be positive, no doubt. The world economy will be a new economy, a different economy after corona, and it might be for the better, so I think that I think that we should look at the other possibilities, not coronavirus. Please go ahead. Doctor, please go ahead. The repercussions are not negative in entirety, but we have other positive impact because this increases the effectiveness of the world in the economy and the business sector. Uh, uh, Make it more vigorous. So the recovery that we have witnessed in the equity market, despite the risks that we have seen for the downturn of the world economy, this is a positive indicator that this crisis might generate positive things in business sector, which can drive more growth. But for us at the national level, this is one of the challenges that we have addressed, and we handle with the optimism and the caution and the learned lessons and the takeaway points that we should have national transformation and the realization of the Vision 2030 to diversify the economy in well-calculated steps, and this is required from us to have a financial stability, despite the huge costs and the burden on the citizen in the short term and run, but the benefits on the long run will be much and far better for the financial stability and the currency stability. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has a lot of economic advantages compared to the other surrounding countries or neighboring countries. Rather, financial stability and the exchange rate of Riyal, they are not decision, but as byproduct and results of sound policies and hedging adopted by the government for the sustainability and the stability of the economic policies. And as I said before, that we can say a lot, but the main point is the results. The results speak for themselves, and we can say that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia during this crisis, compared to other countries, the kingdom has made a huge success and the progress, and the main indicator and the proof for this is keeping the jobs. And you can look at the other crises in terms of losing jobs in other countries, and the government was so keen to maintain the jobs. I asked Mr. Abdurrahman just within a minute, what are the key areas emerged in the crisis which fit for investment, especially after we recover from the crisis? And I think I have partially answered this question, that the key areas is to think about flexibility, agility in business model in any sector. If you have a high flexible business model, this is the secret, not to focus on specific areas. Mr. Mohammed Al-Bishi, this is as my colleagues have said, we don't have a vaccine for the virus, but for me personally, the world will not resort to a second lockdown, because any second or a new lockdown for the world will double hit their economies. But at the national level, I expect that we will have recovery, and because of the high prices of oil, and we haven't recovered the oil prices before Corona. Vision 2030 proved the effectiveness of the Vision 2030, and I think the Vision 2030 was the main driver for us to overcome the this COVID pandemic. We don't have enough time to take more questions. I am so delighted and happy to be with you, Dr. Khalid, and and other colleagues. I would like to thank you, and thank you for being with us for about 1 hour and a half. Thank you.